Thank you very much, and a very good morning. And it's really my great pleasure to be here this morning to actually have a very interesting and lively chat with four spectacular ladies, who have done amazing work in their journey. And I can promise you, you will have a very exciting show. So, the topic is something that it's, really unique, breaking barriers. And of course, if you will think that by just seeing five women on stage, you will be crying, together, singing and saying how difficult it is. No, it's not. You're not going to get any of that. But I have to say that, many of the stories that the four ladies will be sharing will be very important to the men as well. So without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Joan to actually start off, on the topic about, you know, different barriers, and then, about lack of integration. That it's not just across gender, but actually across culture and ages. Maybe Joan, you can lead us with this. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning. I'm very happy to be back here in Singapore and be at the GYSS. I was here for the first time last year. It was such a great experience, and I'm thrilled that we have so many participants here, up to 400. I heard this morning. Fantastic. So I was thinking about this whole thing with STEM, and I think there's two things we can really do better as we progress in our careers. One is integration of science, technology, engineering, and math. It's the integration of these sciences, and it may be integration at a table with other disciplines. It may be integration for some of us, or some of you, you will have one foot in one discipline and another foot in another discipline. You'll be the translators, right? So I have one foot in environmental engineering and one foot in public health. And so I think showing that integration of STEM is very important. And I think the other thing we can do better is really the integration across, the ages, across, the educational system. So when I was at the University of South Florida, we had a program called Oceanography Camp for Girls. And it was very, very successful in promoting young women and their interest in the sciences and in marine science, both in the physics of the ocean, and I was in the biology piece, and then we had the chemists. Um, and so and of course, instrumentation and oceanography is very important. And so, it was really successful as you followed these young girls through high school, through middle school, high school, and into college. And they went into sciences. And there was interest from the boys eventually, too. There was an interest from the other professors to say, let's have a oceanography camp for boys as well. And so at some point, we're going to have to sometimes segregate, but other times maybe integrate across the genders as well. And we were talking before this, we came up here on stage in the pre-panel meeting, and there was a lot of interest about, how do we bring everybody together to have that mentorship? And so those of us that work in this area, we have to think about how do we give back to middle school, high school, and undergraduates if we're not in graduates. And then how do we show the integration? And I thought, I really appreciated David's last slide this morning because what he put up, he's a protein chemist, right? And does this very sophisticated work. But at the end, he put up how all of this impacts so many different fields and how he would probably work with a lot of collaborators. So I think we have to think about doing those things better.
Thanks. And I'd like to then invite Donna, to share a little bit about your views about, on science education and whatever that we feel that we know, but I think there's still lots that we don't know. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more.
So one of the things I was talking about is that what I would like to see better in science education is the fact that we spend too much time trying to teach all the science that we already know, and not about the fact that once you are scientists, it's about what you don't know. And I've just watched the difference from when I went into my child's grade 4 class and you would ask them a question, every grade 4 kid jumps at the chance to answer the question. And if they're wrong, they don't care, okay? It's perfectly okay to be wrong. But by the time I went into my daughter's grade 8 class, nobody nobody wanted to answer the question anymore. It was very embarrassing now to be wrong. And I think, I mean, puberty does that to us, but I think we have to learn to teach that it's okay to be wrong. It's it's okay not to know, because that's what science is all about. It's about not knowing. And I think if we could get that more into the education system, it would also break down a lot of barriers.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think we need to be not afraid, to actually tell everyone what actually we still do not know. I think with that, I would like to invite Professor K. Nemoto. I think what you are doing, it's pretty unique, and I would like you to maybe tell us a little bit more about your area and the challenges for a female physicist.
Okay, so education is of course essential for us, but there are two sides, right? Of course, we learn science, engineering, mathematics in schools, and that's part of the education. But education also part of the cultural norms. It cannot be disconnected from it. Of course, there are good things about it, but also, in Japan, it's very traditionally sort of anti physics or mathematics for girls in education. Of course, these days is much changed, but still there are some norms, like if girls are not good mathematics or physics, it's not for the disciplines for girls to go. And that's because that the parents' generation is older than the younger generation. Even the younger minds are much more freely thinking about physics, mathematics, engineering, all these STEM field. So when I was a child, as I was kind of sort of stupid enough to realize there are differences in cultural norms related to gender. So I liked physics and mathematics, and I just follow that. So in some sense, following curiosity is very important. So as a human being, it's child or adult, doesn't matter, we tend to sort of respond to social expectations, parents' expectations, friends' expectations. That's normal, but you cannot be dictated by that. We have to see our passion, our curiosity as very important values to us, and following that is way to forward in terms of the science as well. We have questions, and as Donna said, all questions cannot be, everything cannot be answered, but there are some questions you even not be answerable. But we follow the curiosity. We try to have some understanding of something we don't know. Yeah. So that's one way of looking at the problem or sort of future.
Thank you. So, which means, don't let society tell girls that you are not good in maths, right? So, what about you, Patricia? I think you have grown up in two cultures, from Taiwan and then after that in the United States. Can you tell us how your experiences, that in reaching to where you are today, and some of the challenges where you have faced in terms of traditional expectations? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So yeah, I mean, come from a very traditional Taiwanese family. My parents are have or not into science or even sort of academic research. But so growing up, there was no expectation that I was going to be good in math or science or physics. I was expected to get good grades, but the typical expectation of girls are not in the STEM fields. I just fell in love with it, and I found that I was actually good at it. And so I kind of just show up as a surprise, like, hey, I can do this, hey, I can do that. So it was very fun. For me, it's great because it's a meeting low expectations, right? And I can just do what I want and being able to pursue that. When I got to college, I think my parents were expecting me to study something, get a good job. So when I told my parents that I wanted to go major in physics, my dad was like, What are you going to do, right? How are you going to make money as a physicist? And how are you going to find, who's going to marry somebody with physics degree and a PhD? um, but it worked out, right? It worked out for me. I was just trying it, enjoying myself, having fun. Found that I could survive, the very hard courses at Caltech, being able to survive in the lab, and have fun. And along the way, I picked up many good friends who supported me all these years, and having a supportive spouse, and really just a team, a network, also mentors, and other people who really champion me through these years. And it's great, And today, yes, I'm doing fantastic physics. I'm building quantum computers with a fantastic team at a company and making money to support myself and my family. So my message here is just try it, right? They're going to be, things are not going to be smooth. They're going to be setbacks and failures, and not everybody's going to be on board. But if you love it, just go do it and try it, and you might be surprised at what you can accomplish.
Wow, you are really leading the model life. You can do science and you can make money and a supportive spouse. Wow, I think, and I'll just like to then invite Donna. I think you advocate very strongly about support and having a supportive spouse. Can you tell us all about how your supportive spouse has been supporting you all this while?
Exactly. I do say this. I think we all need supportive spouses, and mine is here again with me here. And he does keep asking when it's his turn next. So I just want to say the brief time I was supportive. Um, and one of the funny stories about what families expect, right? I grew up with my mother saying that she wished she had gone into math. And instead, she became an English teacher because she was told not to. And she did say always to me, always do what you want. Don't let anybody else tell you what to do. But also, when she got married, she told my dad she wanted to work one more year. And my dad said, then we'll wait one more year to get married. Now, when my husband and I were getting married, he had his dream job. It was at Bell Labs in New Jersey, and it was one of the places to be if you were a short pulse laser person like we were. And I had taken a postdoc, so I had to look for a job, right? He had the permanent job. I could not find a job in New Jersey. To save my soul, Reagan Star Wars had come and gone, and the laser jobs were gone. And so I took a job in California, which, for those of you not from the States, New Jersey's on one side of the country and California's on the other side. And we told my parents that we were going to live apart for our first year of marriage. And my mother said, I am so embarrassed. I have not even met Doug's parents. What will they think of me as the mother? And this is when I said, well, this is when it came up. Because my dad then said, I think it's great. And she turned, Doug did not know the story. She said, I wasn't even allowed to keep working. And you think it's okay that your daughter's going right across the country when she's getting married. And he said, times are changing, Edith, times are changing. So then after a year, it was getting old to live right across the country. And so I did take a job as a technician, okay, at Princeton University. And I said, all right, I'll go off the academic trail. And I became a technician at Princeton so we could live together in New Jersey. And then Bell Labs started to collapse. So we both looked for jobs, and I got the faculty job, and he followed me. Unfortunately for both of us, when we were in Bell Labs, he was near his family in his country with his dream job. And now we moved 50 kilometers from where my mother was for me to have my dream job in my country. One of these times, we'll both get to have it somewhere in the middle.
Very
Maybe,
nice. Thank you.
maybe.
So maybe you see everyone is cheering. And I think what about you, Joan? I think, Donna has shared her experiences about having a support network. What about you, Joan? I think, what you do, it's very unusual. I mean, and I will say that you're ahead of time with what what you have been working on. Can you tell us how your support network has supported you over the years and that enabled you to break multiple barriers?
Yeah. You know, I think that, you always get asked about this balance of life, and I think we talked about, a lot of the household issues and children's issues, and that being said, that's probably going to fall to the woman. And so you need a partner. Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a friend, maybe, it can be someone. And I said, um, well, life really isn't fun balancing. So I always think of it as like a teeter-totter, right? And how many of you know a teeter-totter is? Like, that was there when I was a kid. So you sit on one end, somebody sits on the other end, right? You push up, and the other person goes down, and the other person pushes up, and then you go up and down, right? Teeter-totter. And so that's how I think life is like. And sometimes you're on that teeter-totter and you have to have that mentor on the other side. Sometimes it's a mentor, a spouse, a partner, a student. It can be a student, it can be so many different people. But sometimes they get off and you slam down on the ground, right? If they get off and you're up, you're down on the ground hard, right? But other times you're pushing hard and helping, and the other time they're pushing hard and helping you. So I really think it's important in those of us that are in science, in this field in STEM and variety, that we have that support system, and we find those partners, and they're going to be different. They're going to be different throughout our careers. And I always call my life like sinking, swimming, and floating in water science. Because any of you that you've probably experienced this and you're going to experience, sometimes you feel like you're sinking. You're barely keeping your head above water. Everything's going wrong, and you need someone to help you along. Other times you're swimming hard, right? You're making progress, you're feeling good. And then every once in a while it's great because you're floating along, enjoying the ride. And so I think what we forget about in our careers is, and all of you are here, and we're all up here because we love our work and we have a passion for it. And we get a lot of doors closed, and maybe you have more doors closed when you're a woman in this arena, depending on your culture, the country, where you are in your career. But another door always opens when one door closes. So don't forget to look for that other open door and get those partnerships.
I think that is so nice to hear, and I fully resonate with what you mentioned about having different support network, different people, whether it's a partner or friend or even a family member. And I will say that we do need different support systems in different seasons. I think our priorities change, and also our needs will differ with time. And I think we have to be ready when the other support network jumps off, and we need to stand up immediately and maybe continue or find new support network. I think with that, I would like to invite Kay, to share your perspectives. I think your journey and your story has been very fascinating. I think we would like to hear a little bit more about how, you have through your support network over the years, whether is it professional, personal, that actually enabled you to avoid isolation from what you do.
Yeah, so another door actually you mentioned is very important, I think. So if I stayed in Japan after my PhD education, then probably it was too difficult to stay in physics. But another door was in somewhere different. I went to Australia. So it's not necessarily you stay in the community, you feel nothing you can solve, you cannot change, you have difficulty, but you can solve. But maybe a solution is not where you are. You can be completely somewhere else, and that's totally fine. But that's also, this kind of event. It's very important you connect it to other people. You will see different views and you understand different values, and that gives you more doors to open. So if you are having the difficulties, then you can look around, and help might come from other completely different places. And that another thing is we often, we have in one place, and you feel isolated, and that is very bad feeling for your science and or engineering or whatever you are doing as a research. It's a research you need to be really excited, right? And feeling isolation is, I think, really powerful effect to our brain. And I'm not really a biologist, I'm just only a quantum physicist. I don't know anything about the brain, but I think it seems there are some, my reptile brain in the middle core, it feels isolation is threat. So I cannot stop feeling bad about it. But knowing that we can sort of control our emotion, that's also true. So this is just only my reptile brain feeling it, but the world is not just small committee or small department or small university. The world is like this, right? So there are doors always you can open, and that will change, I think, your future.
Thank you. And I think on that note, what about Patricia? I think your journey, you shared earlier on a more personal angle, but I think professionally, uh, did you have any specific incident that you would like to share? How, or some of your support system enabled you to actually believe that you could reach to where you are?
Yeah, and I think sort of how I got into science, how I got into physics, was also because of my friends in college. I um, a friend of mine and I were both thinking, double major of physics and computer science, and we made a bet that whoever dropped out first owes the other person dinner. We were in that together. Um, I had all our friends were encouraging me to do physics so they can copy my homework. And this is how I got in there. And I say, okay, I can try to this. And it was fun. I think that's the most important part is that having the support network to be there through the hard times when, you're ready to quit, and they're there. And I would say today at Quantinuum, a company where I'm at right now, building the highest performing quantum computers, we also have a fantastic team, people I love working with, who really prioritize teamwork, working together, and everybody checks their ego at the door. Um, and everybody's helping each other, pulling through these very hard, difficult projects together. And that's really important, right? Having people who got your back, people who you can share good times and bad times with, and it's really the experience and the journey that's really important. And sometimes there are going to be mistakes and failures, it's hard, but then maybe you can laugh about it with your friends. They'll be there to help pick up the pieces together. And it's really that experience, that camaraderie, that's really making it worthwhile.
Thank you. And I would just like to maybe change a little bit of the angle. I think you all have shared about positive support and all. I think what about, you know, clearly, Joan, you alluded that it's not all beautiful in the journey. Could you tell us, along the way, were there any difficult decisions that you had to make, certain opportunities that looked really wonderful at the time that you had to let go in order to achieve what you had wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think, along the way, I think I was very much like you and Patricia, I just went along, I just thought, well, I'm just going to keep going. And I didn't really hit any trouble until I was assistant professor, I would say. And so, I was in a dysfunctional department at that time, and there was a lot of other problems. But at any rate, the story was I was on a committee with another full professor, and she would always ask me, like, how's it going? Do you have any trouble? Call me if you do. And she was a philosopher. She was in a very different department. So I was on this committee, and that's how I first met her. And so when I had my own issue, I almost didn't call her. You're embarrassed. You think it's your fault. Oh, it's a problem. How do I solve it myself? But you don't really always ask for help, is what I found out, because I did call her and I said, this is my issue. This is my problem. She goes, wow, that is solvable. And she knew the system. I was assistant professor. I'd only been there, a short time. And she just took charge, helped me, held my hand, went through. She knew the provost, the president of the university, da 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 da. And, and I think back at how I almost didn't call her, didn't ask for help. And that's happened a number of times throughout my career, and in making decisions to move, change universities from Florida to Michigan. Like when my students said, "Are we exchanging palm trees for like frozen lakes?" And how are we going to sample that? So that was But I had two mentors that one a professional a professor in microbiology. She was president of NSF, National Science Foundation, very high up, Rita Caldwell. Some of you might know her. And she always would accept calls, phone calls. And I was a full professor then, and I still had to make this decision. And then I called my other colleague who was in engineering. He was a consulting engineer, worked in the water business. I was leaving a very vibrant water business relationships in Florida, going to the Great Lakes. So I was like, okay, I think having those mentors and having people help. And then I asked my husband too, but he wasn't much help because he was like, oh yeah, let's move. That sounds great. And I said, but what, should we stay? Oh yeah, that sounds good. Let's stay. I was like, well, I don't think I'm very supportive, honey. But you need those mentors and people in your life, and all through your career. And then you try to give back. Then when other people find obstacles, you get to a point where you have less problems or issues that you have to solve. And there's so many different problems you run in the STEM arena, right, that you need help with. And so I think having those mentors all throughout your career is really fantastic, is way to go.
Yes, I think you're so right. Of course, having a supportive husband as your fan is also important. But yeah, I think what you said about not being embarrassed to ask for help when you really need it. I think that is when um, you see that actually there are many people who are willing to help you genuinely. So I think that is something that I've also experienced that myself. I think very often, we have the pride, that might get in the way. But I think, if you do need help or even just some advice or another perspective, I think it's actually very important. I think with that, Donna, on the you have a very interesting PhD journey that with a very strong mentor, and perhaps would you like to share if there were any stories that sort of shape your mind that in our journey while we need support and also when we have our passion, but there will be cases where maybe we may not be meeting people who were that supportive along the way, and how do you think that we should overcome that?
I think we have to speak up for ourselves. The one time I didn't, um, so I said that I got the faculty job, and I got the faculty job. I moved up to Canada, back to Canada, 5 weeks before I had my second child. And so she was born in September. And so when I joined the University of Waterloo, 3 of us got hired at the same time because they had a huge let go because of financial things, and now we were coming back. So the other 2 guys and they were both guys, they started in September. And I said, I can't start in September because sometime in September I'm having a baby. But the grants are all due in October. And not the 2 guys wrote 2 grants, but optics had an extra one, and I study optics. So I wrote 3 grants, right? And I also had a 2-year-old at home, and he would not sleep when the baby slept. So I had to write the grants while pushing the baby in a stroller up and down the hallways and doing it. And then when I went in and asked the chair for help and see what he thought about my main research grant that we all have to get in Canada, I said, now, when am I going to start teaching? Because I know that the 2 guys that started I didn't start in September. I wasn't getting paid, right? They're going to start teaching in January. And I knew that Waterloo had summer because we have co-op. So I assumed I was going to be given a summer job. And they said, no, we have you down to teach in January as well. So actually that Monday morning when they first started paying me, at 8:30 in the morning, I had to teach my first class, which meant that they did expect me to do the work without the money, So I'd written 3 research, and at the end of November, I got a call and they said, we've had our undergrad speaker has canceled, and this would be a great time for you to introduce yourself. So could you just come in and give this undergrad seminar? I said, that's right, because I really have nothing else to do. And then they offered to look after my 2 kids. But I thought I should have asked for help, and I should have said no to the teaching at 8:30 in the morning. That was just stupid of me. But when you have 2 young kids and you've written 3 research grants, you really are so tired you're not thinking clearly. So I'm just saying that was a mistake. But the other thing to know, and we talk about mentoring, I think networking, which is why you're all here, is so important. And so we did have a local optics chapter, and there was a woman in it, and she really helped me get through the tenure process, right? Which was a bit stressful for me because I did have this sort of weird start to my whole process. And I think it was good that I got to meet her through this optics networking, and she helped me a lot. And so I think this is important, is that you have to know when to ask for help and when to say no. Do say no when it's totally ridiculous what they're asking you to do. And yeah, and find those colleagues that can help you.
Wonderful. So learn to say no.
Learn to say no.
Learn to say no. What about you, Kay? I think in terms of women leadership and in your field, what are any highlights you would like to share with us, that could encourage the young women out there that it's all possible? You don't have to be someone aggressive and fierce, but you can do it your way. Maybe if you can tell us a little bit, some advice for the young.
Right, this is a difficult part because I think physicists, well, I think it's all sort of researchers are competitive in a sense, and we all compete in a sense in the science or engineering in the field you are working in. And also that's true. You need to be that's first priority. You need to be happy doing your work. When I had first my own group in Tokyo, I was kind of running around to set up everything for postdocs and students, and I was exhausted. And my older supervisor told me, you have to be, first of all, you have to be happy in your own group. And that was a very important point. You have to be happy doing your work. But at the same time, you are a part of the community or society, or that's a department or whatever. And that environment, you are one element of consisting that environment. And you have to be aware of your influence to the environment. You to be happy, of course, you yourself need to be happy, but you need to be happy to be in that environment as well you like. And you are part of the environment. So, it's not really you're happy and it's you serves for the community, serves for other people, helping other people are different things. It's all connected. And that's value is very important. We need to think about also our research, but again, need to think about our society, sort of research society in the bigger society sometimes. So it's getting bigger and bigger more, but I think that is an important view we tend to lose sometimes.
Yes, I think that is so important. I think in order to achieve what we want, I think we really need to like what we are doing and be happy. I think that is the basics. I think very often we do encounter different experiences where sort of challenge our love, our first love, and if that was the right thing to do. But I think if we were to be really convicted, and I think we just have to keep going and believe that with the heart in the right place and with a lot of hard work, you will get there. So maybe with this, on this note, I would like Patricia. I think your journey has also been pretty different, and you have gone, from academia, and you went, to the industry. Maybe if you would like to share a little bit about some challenges that maybe were just myths. They are not really a challenge, but there's always this fear for people, to move out of academia. I mean, there's this fear. I think this hesitancy. Maybe if you can share, actually, there's no barrier. if there's anything you'd like to share on this.
Yeah. So I got my PhD at University of Michigan. Afterwards, I did a postdoc at a national lab in the U.S., National Institute of Standards and Technology. They have top-notch research in quantum, even though they're a government lab. And then I also worked and then afterwards, I got a job at the Army Research Lab, also very uncommon. Um, it is weird because obviously, in grad school, your mentors are academics and they expect everybody, not everybody, but they expect very good to go into academia, right? And sometimes the truth is, very few people get academic positions. There's actually a world out there in industry, in government labs, in different positions that actually need the skill set from science, right, with a PhD or um, otherwise. And that need is very great, but of course, your PhD advisor, your professor's not going to tell you that because they have no experience with that, right? But I did have some friends, or maybe more upperclassmen, the postdocs before me who went into industry and were highly successful. And they were able to, share those experiences with me and just really understand the landscape of what is possible is very important. And then after a few years working in government lab, I moved. A friend called me up from industry and say, "Hey, you want to come join us? We have lots of projects and interesting things for you to do." And originally I was like, "Oh, well, I don't know. Government job is pretty safe. I'm not sure. I want to move." But he invited me out, and so I went and visited, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, right?" And just having that open mind and being able to see a different perspective of what's possible. And I think, one thing led to another. And today, we're building these quantum computers that you would never be able to build in an academic lab or in the government lab, right? It's at a scale that is so large. We have teams with several hundred people working on this to be able to bring this technology to fruition. And this would not be possible before. And even before we formed this company, formed this group, nobody else has ever done this before. And so this is a new way of thinking about how can we tackle this, right? How can we restructure our organization, the way we work, to be able to accomplish what needs to be done? And having that open mind about it, I think is very important for a lot of these scientific advancements. And yes, I still have a lot of academics, professors who go, "Who are you and what do you guys do?" And I go, "I'm like, our quantum computer, I think, about performs yours." But it really is a teamwork, a different perspective and different way of thinking.
Yeah, I think actually you will never actually leave academia. I think if you continue to push the boundaries of science, you'll just look in a slightly different perspective, but actually one never leaves. I think with that, I think there's also, for sure, Joan and Donna, when during your time, you shared about, when you struggled as an assistant professor, but along the way, I'm sure you have encountered people who were making your life a little difficult, throwing little pebbles or stones along the way. I think we would all like to hear, what did you do? How did you overcome some of these pebbles? Did you kick them away, or did you throw pebbles back at them, or this?
Well, I think, well, there's some lessons learned. It is collaborative. Science is in STEM, in the STEM arena. I think it is very collaborative. I feel it is going to need to be more collaborative to solve these big problems that we're seeing out in society. And what I was thinking about like, oh, I should write a article on know when to hold them, know when to fold them, from the old, you know, uh, Western song, because you will meet people that you start a collaboration with and it's not working out. And it can be that you meet people that are unethical, or you have a clash in personalities, or there's a number of reasons, right? And early on, I tried to make those relationships work, those collaborations work, and it was a man, and I was a woman, but also it was somebody that was higher up, in their position than myself. So you're trying to make it work. But what I learned is, and then another professor came by, and I was just like struggling with this whole thing, and trying to make this relationship work and this project. And so the other professor says, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I go into his office, blah, 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 and I talk about trying to fix blah, da, 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 da." And he goes, "Don't go into his office anymore." He goes, "Just go do your work." And I was like, wow, that was such an easy solution. So I never went in his office again. I just went and did my work. And so I think you learn these kind of lessons, right? That sometimes you do have to shut your door or move on and recognize, that you should spend your time elsewhere. And, I'll just say to everybody here, don't underestimate the friendships that you'll make here at these events and these international venues. I grew up with a colleague of mine at an international venue. We stayed in touch. And I became a postdoc. She became a scientist at Thames Water. And we put in a proposal. It got rejected, they said, on cryptosporidium. It was a new pathogen. And then she called me later, and we're talking away. I realized it's like 1 a.m. her time. And I'm like, "Why are you calling me so late?" And she goes, "Well, guess what? Thames had an outbreak of cryptosporidium, and we'd like you to come over, and you and I are going to educate the water industry at Thames." And that all happened just because I was at an international meeting with her, and we became friends, she and her colleague. Both she and he were in the lab together at Thames. So I'll just say to all of you, don't underestimate the friendships you're going to make here, and stay in touch. And again, I just by chance, I got this good advice to shut the door on something that wasn't working. So again, it's sort of like what you said, Donna, know when to say no, I guess. And that's hard to do when you start out in your career.
Yes, I think it's also very important to stay focused. And not let some of this noise and distractions. I think there will always be power play in no matter where we are, no matter what we do. So I think it's really important to recognize that and not be afraid to acknowledge it. Not, you don't have to necessarily confront it, but I think you need to acknowledge, and if it's not working out, I think you need to say no. Maybe say no to yourself that you're not accepting this, and you moved on. And you move on in whichever way, it could be don't go to his office again, or you pick a slightly different path, and I think it will all work out. But what about you, Donna? I think for you, I think clearly there were also many cases where, of course, they're asking you to go in at 8:30 in the morning, and you could have said no. But what about? Is there any another story that you think that the young people here will actually benefit? When you encounter difficult people.
Well, I also want to say there's probably more really great people than bad people, so let's keep that in mind, because the one story, when I did start in Canada, at the same time as I was coming back as an assistant professor, there was this new network for optics forming across Canada, and they had an ultrafast group, and I did ultrafast optics, and I was not asked to join. But the person that was on the review committee to decide if they should get money was my PhD supervisor. And he went, "I don't understand. You have an ultrafast part of this, And my former student is here back in Canada, and she's not invited to be part of this. I don't understand this. So I sort of got word leaked back to me that I had not been invited because one person said that I said I was too busy to be part of it. And I went, that makes no sense, because if I was so busy, I would need the money from this network. So how can you be too busy to take money? It just didn't make any sense. And it was just one person tried to do something nice for me. He contacted me and he said, we would like to give you an invited talk at an upcoming optics section of the Canadian Association of Physics meeting. And of course, I'd been a technician for the 5 years before I became an assistant professor. And I'm very honest. And I said, well, this makes no sense, because unless you want me to talk about what I did as a postdoc 5 years ago, I don't want to talk about what I'm going to try to set up, because it's going to take a few years. And, so I appreciate that you want to give me an invited talk and introduce myself back to Canada, but I really don't have anything I should talk about right now. So you should give that slot to somebody else. That person was the person who spread the word that I said I was too busy, because that's the way he thought. There's only one reason to turn down an invited talk, is that you're too busy. So it was a misunderstanding. But now on the good side, somebody else from one of the other areas came and he said, I want to advertise to Waterloo, because nobody in Waterloo is in this network, to the students that they can be involved. And he came to see my lab and he looked and he goes, wow, you actually do a lot of optics. I said, that is my field. And he goes, you should be part of this network. And I said, I know. And so he went back, and this is how great, and maybe it's just a Canadian thing, but the head of the Ultrafast asked everybody in the Ultrafast group, would they all take somewhere between a 10 and 20% cut in their funding so they could add me to them and we would all have the same funding. And they all said yes. So to me, I think people are more good than bad. And it was one of the times that I got included because they realized that a mistake had been made.
Agree. And it's such a nice end. So we will have a little bit of time for questions now. So I think, are there any brave souls who would like? Yes. Wow, many questions. So maybe I think the lady in blue. Yes, her first question.
Hi, thank you very much for sharing your journey and also for enlightening us with the challenges that you have faced along the way. My name is Deepika and I'm a postdoc at EPFL. I'm fortunate to have my spouse here also as a participant. And talking about the support network, what I would like to hear from you is there a need for more opportunities? And possibilities for dual career couples in STEM and particularly in academia to solve two-body problems. Thank you.
Maybe Kay, would you like to take that?
Sorry, I didn't quite get the question.
Yeah, I think she was asking. Maybe you want to repeat your question again?
Yeah, so my question is regarding the two-body problems, particularly pertaining in academia, and if there is a need to advocate for more opportunities for dual career couples in academia.
Two-body, so-called two-body problems. I think Donna already mentioned two-body problems. Actually, my husband and I lived in two different countries. One is in the UK, one is in Japan for more than 10 years. It's sort of, but it's not what other people think. It's your choice. If it works for you, then that's fine. So, the people tend to think, what is their choice, this or that. But, you can have a different set of choices as well. And of course, maybe you cannot satisfy everything you like, but, maybe you can satisfy essence of, what do you like to have. And I quite actually enjoyed living apart for 10 years, more than 10 years in the different countries. So, and of course, now we are living together and I enjoy it too. So, enjoyment comes in different ways, and it's not necessarily, family has to be this way, or the couple has to be this way. If it suits to you, and you also have a passion to STEM research, and you are excited about it, that's also wonderful.
Yeah, I think, spousal hires at some universities, there's policies there, and I think we need better hires, better policies. Actually, universities that figure that out, you get two good people, right? And it can be fantastic. But often what I've seen is, yeah, people have to live apart for a while, and then they, one gets the offer, and then they talk about whether there's a spousal hire opportunity, whichever one gets the offer, and they, try to work that out with the university. Some universities have better policies than others, and so you ask. Don't be afraid to ask about those policies if you're once you're offered. But I have she was my postdoc, but now she's a professor, and she and her husband lived apart. He was a mathematician, and she was in public health. And he eventually got a job after about a year and a half at her institution, and she was doing very, very well. And then they were able to accommodate her. So maybe it doesn't happen right when you get the job. Maybe it happens later. But I think ask about whether, and companies probably also, I think in industries, they also have some policies. Some companies do a better job than others. Not sure about Canada, but
Yeah,
don't be afraid to ask, I think, right?
yeah. Ask, and also the good negotiation skills. It also comes handy.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
I mean, I want to say, I think when I was younger, earlier in the career, it's kind of embarrassing, right? It's very uncomfortable to have this. It feels like an extra burden. Maybe people might not like you, but really, an institution that really values you, um, they they will go the extra way to help you and your spouse in your situation, whatever that is, to make accommodation for that. And so, yeah, for companies, I would say, one time I got a job offer, and I said, okay, well, if I have to move, I have to figure out what my spouse is doing. So I'm going to hold off on accepting the offer until my husband gets a job. And they really wanted me badly. So they say, well, what does your husband do? And got my husband a job as well. And solve that problem for us. And so, yeah, absolutely, don't be afraid to ask, even though it is uncomfortable, but, you're worth it, I say.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I just want to say my husband's and my favorite example is the woman that one really big school in the United States wanted so bad. She got both her husband and her ex-husband, who they were doing childcare together, and so they did 3 hires to get her. Just saying.
I think that's the one question.
That's
Yes.
great.
So thank you very much for all your personal insights. You spoke about the importance of emotional support net, and also to have the solid research ecosystem. What would you say are the barriers that have to be broken for scientists from the global south who don't have, especially, research ecosystems that allow them to research in their own countries? The representativity of big prizes, laureates from the global south is almost negligible. So what are those barriers that have to be broken?
Donna, would you like to take?
Well, I mean, we've tried this at the University of Waterloo. I would say it takes a very open mind to bring people. And I would say our biology department is much more open-minded than my physics department, because they've hired a whole lot more people than we have, because they were willing to take all of these opportunities. We do have in Canada where there are hires just for certain groups of people that are not represented. But they let every department say, you can hold the standard to whatever you want, but you only get to hire if. And some departments think, what the heck, we get to hire, we're hiring, and they've had great success. But people have to be open to it, and not everybody is, I'm afraid.
It's a question.
First of all, thank you very much for the first section is women's talk. So I'm Jia Luo, I'm from Taiwan, and now I'm doing a postdoctoral research in Sinica. I'm an immunologist, and I have a specific question for Patricia Lee. And because I grew up in a very traditional family, and I think during my childhood, I really like physics or mathematics, and the same as my younger sister. She is a medical surgeon now. So my question is, though we are so love STEM subjects, but when we grew up, we have to encounter this kind of gender difference expectation. And now I'm considering to go back to Taiwan to have the faculty position there. So what can I do to educate the next generation in Taiwan? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think the most important thing is just show up, right, and be there as an example, right? When you're visible, when people see you, kind of make it normal, right? That woman can be a physicist and can be, or whatever field you're in, and that you're passionate about, and be who you are, and just being there. I found is probably the most important thing you can do, right? How do you educate it? Just be yourself. Be yourself. Show the example. Let people see you, and see you as a role model of what they can be, and that they can decide to be who they want to grow up and be. I think that's enough. And certainly, events like this is fantastic where we can engage younger generations and different people, and just be there. Be there for them when people have questions, when people want to talk, need some guidance, need some mentorship. Just be there, and that's the most important part, and that's the most important thing you can do.
And I would like to ask more about your personal experience when you grew up in Taiwan. And I think we both survived, so now we can give opinions now. But I think many girls during their Taiwan education, they beginning to have enthusiasm in STEM, but how can we help to against this is kind of the MSC, and in your personal experience, how you deal with that?
Okay, so my family moved to the US when I was 10, so I only finished fourth grade. And I would say when I was little, I was terrible student. Most of the time, I can ace my test, but then, there'll be like math tests where I completely fail, right? That rigid school system just did not work for me. For me, I didn't care, right? I got yelled at, I got in trouble. But I read the books I wanted to do. I wanted to read. I study the things I wanted to learn. And I think, and then, fortunately in the US system, I think that works a lot better for me. But giving kids a little more flexibility, right, and being able to support through that. I had teachers at school that were supporting me. I think there was this, gifted and talented school program, but really it's just a bunch of kids with ADHD in the program, and so we were all have terrible grades, but somehow we made it through. And the teachers there were very understanding, right? Like, okay, you're not gonna do well in the test, but we're going to learn. We're gonna go out, have fun, go do these more hands-on projects to help you kids learn, and develop those talents. And so I was very lucky that there were teachers and there were people there that really supported me through that. And I think that's really important. to have options in terms of different educational options so that we can develop everybody's talent because everybody learns differently.
Thank you very much for your sharing.
Well, so I think with that, we have come to the end of this session. And I just a few take-home, pointers, right? Be there, show up, deliver, say no when you have to, and just keep going. So with that, thank you, everyone.